Hello chess fans, this is a quick recap of the round 9 from the Aeroflot Open. This features Andrei Esipenko's clean attacking technique over French defense against the youngster Jagadish Siddharth. So here Andrei plays knight c3, welcoming the open lines. For knight f6 he goes bishop g5, pinning the knight. Pawn takes, knight takes, knight bd7. Here Andrei plays queen f3, which first defends the knight on e4 in case the pin is removed, and also prepares the queenside castling. After bishop e7 he quickly castles h6, bishop f4. So we note that he is not retreating the bishop to h4 because this would block the future advances of h4 which may be required while attacking the black's king. So he plays bishop f4, knight takes e4, queen takes e4, knight f6, queen f3. We notice that he plays the queen back to f3 while queen e1 was a valid alternative, but he plays queen f3 because this maintains the pin of the pawn on b7 because the rook would hang. So he apart from developing his pieces also hinders black's development. Castle, bishop d3, a natural square for the bishop. Also queen takes d4 is a blunder here because it would lead to simply bishop h7 check, and the queen would be lost next move. Bishop d3, pawn c5, knight e2. So as we can see, white is leading in development. He has brought all his pieces out. Now black still needs to develop this bishop on c8, which is the worst piece usually in French defense. Now black aims at solving his opening problems by playing queen d5. Now this is aimed at displacing this strongly placed white queen. Also, after exchanging the queen, white's attack may be weaker. But here Esipenko plays a strong move, c4, inviting the exchange of queen, but in turn he gets the open g file, which he will use for his rooks and attack black's king. b6, finally black is trying to complete his development. Quickly rook h1, king h8, removing the pin on the g7 pawn, bishop e5. So this is a very instructive move because this bishop has a strong outpost on e5. Now the knight cannot move. Ideally we would like to chase away this bishop with this move, but here because knight d7 would hang simply the pawn on g7. So after bishop b7, rook g3. So notice that this move is both attacking and defending. It defends the pawn on f3 and also it prepares rook dg1. So all the moves of Esipenko are quite versatile and have multiple purposes. Rook d8, rook dg1. Now there is very strong pressure in the g file. As we can see from the computer evaluation, this position is far from lost, but it is surprising that how consistent pressure can even confuse grandmasters. After rook dg1, it's quite risky to play pawn g5 because after h4 there is very strong pressure. If g takes h4, for example, there is rook g7 threatening mate next move. The knight on f6 is pinned. Similarly, after g6 there is bishop g6. After pawn g6, rook g6, again a checkmate is threatened. Black could defend, for example, with king h7, then but there is rook g7, king h8, and rook takes e7. Also, rook f7 simply loses because after rook h6, rook h7, bishop f6, white is a bunch of pawns up. He defends this g7 pawn with the rook. Now Esipenko plays a very solid move in rook h3. This move maintains a strong bind in black's position. It's hardly any good move left for black. If, for example, he tries knight d7 now, it's just rook h6 is a mate. Similarly, the bishop cannot move because it has to guard the knight on f6, and the only counterplay he has is probably he could try to open up some lines against the white king, which is what he does. Here calmly and replace pawn b3. It shows how much he understands chess deeply, because he knows that black doesn't have strong counterplay. He is not in any rush to capture back the pawn on d4. Instead, he just improves his king's position and slowly make black void of any useful moves. Rook d7, king b2, rook gc8, f4. Now Andre starts claiming more space on the king side, and here black blunders with rook c5. Now this rook, which was on g8 a couple of moves ago, was a key defender of the position on the king side. However, after rook c5, we clearly see that this rook is misplaced. It's on the queen side. Generally, an attack is very strong if there is a piece that is on the offside. So, because there is one piece that is less to defend the king, here this rook and both the rook on c5 are both out of the game, and this decides the game immediately. And after rook h3, it is not possible to play pawn g6 because Andre had calculated after bishop g6, pawn g6, rook g6, black is totally lost. Checkmate is threatened because this knight is pinned. So the only option for black to prolong the mate is rook takes c5, pawn takes c5, and then to give away the knight as well. He can continue with bishop e4, but then knight f4 is very strong, because after bishop g6, knight g6 check. If king h7, then simply e takes f6 is winning for white, because after bishop d6 there is knight e7 threatening rook g7 followed by mate. For example, if black plays pawn a6, then there is rook g7 check, king h8, knight g6. So in this position he has to capture this knight, but this allows the beautiful rook g7, king h8, and pawn takes e7. Queen next move or lose the rook. So after rook hg3, black plays the strongest defense, one of the strongest defenses, in knight h5, but this simply loses to bishop g7. After knight g7, there is simply rook g7, but Andre didn't want to get into this bishop g5 line, probably because the rook kind of seems to be trapped here, but there is simply rook h7 check, king g8, and rook h6. The rook will be out. He went for something more direct. and more intuitive. He started with rook takes g7. This is the only place where he chose a quite suboptimal move in the position, but was strong enough to outplay his opponent. After knight g7, bishop g7 check, king g8, bishop h6 check. White has more than enough compensation for his sacrifice and a very strong attack, which is hard to survive, as we will see. After king h8, Andre plays a very strong move in pawn f5. So as we can see, the rook and the bishop are the only two attackers, direct attackers on black's king. This bishop is also supporting the cause, but this knight is out of play. So by playing pawn f5, he immediately vacates this square for the knight, and also he includes the pawn into the array of pieces attacking the black king. He tries a5 in desperation, and after f takes c6, f takes c6. Here black cannot play king h8 because after king h8 the king is stuck in the corner, and thanks to the f4 square the knight immediately joins the mating attack. Knight g6 check is threatened, followed by a deadly discover attack. For example, if black plays b5, then simply knight g6 check, king h7, knight e7 simply wins. Because after king takes h6, there is simply knight g8 check, king h5, knight f6 check, giving another fork. If he tries to move away with the bishop, for example, if he tries bishop d8, then knight g6 check, king h7, knight f8 check, king h6, rook g6 check, king h5, knight d7 is winning for white. It looks like he's only a pawn up, but this position is very difficult to defend. For example, if he plays rook g5, then simply even rook e6 is winning for white. And after f takes c6, f takes c6, bishop h6, king f7, bishop g6, king f6, bishop e8. Here the rook is attacked. If wherever this rook moves, for example to c7, then simply bishop g7 check, king f5, bishop g6 is mate. So here black resigned. So this game is really instructive, the way Andre developed his pieces and also coordinated them into an attack, and also many calm moves, not violent forcing moves all the time, but the moves that were slowly improving his position and pressurizing black into blundering. And the final shot in f5 was really instructive, because we always need to include all the pieces into the attack. Even a pawn sometimes is very crucial in deciding the game. I hope Andre plays more of this attacking style chess in the upcoming candidates. And from the last video we saw that he can play very clean positional games as well. So these two games together from Error Fruit Open, so that Andre is quite a versatile chess player.